We're here at ARC World Forum in Orlando, Florida. I'm pleased to welcome Editor Emeritus of SupplyChainBrain, Jean Murphy.
Hello. Today I'm speaking with Steve Banker, Service Director for Supply Chain Management at ARC Advisory Group. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you.
We're here at the ARC Forum, where the theme is how new processes and technology are transforming industry. And some of the buzzwords we really hear a lot are cloud computing and mobility, social media, and the Internet of Things. I wonder if we could take each of those and have you give us your insights on them.
Certainly.
Why don't we begin with social media?
Yeah. Well, you know, I think when you talk to people about social media in a business context for supply chain management, there's a lot of skepticism. But I think there's a couple things going on that are interesting. One thing is that I think employers should recognize it is easier than it has ever been for potential employees to go to a place like LinkedIn, find out who's working at the company, who used to be working in the company, and interview, talk to folks, and find out what it's like going into the job they're going to go into. And logistics can be, you know, a job that's a lot of hours, and so I think employers might have to start treating people a little bit better sometimes, and some companies are. I think the second thing is we're seeing social media-like features put right into certain applications. So a lot of supply chain applications really are about transactional data and very structured ways of doing things. But things in a supply chain break down. And in those sorts of unstructured situations where you have to pull people together and communicate in more ad hoc ways, some for example, you know, in monthly planning type situations, some of these social media type features that have found their way into applications are very interesting.
Can you give us an example of how that might work? Would it sort of be like a conference meeting, or how would that work?
Yeah, let's say that you've put together a demand plan and a supply plan, and you're halfway through the month, and things just aren't tracking right, and you know that ad hoc decisions might have to be made. So there, to the right side of the application, there's a place where you sort of contact the other members and say, we've got a problem, and you create a record of what's happening. At the same time, you try and get that problem resolved.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Might it also kind of become an electronic suggestion box?
It could. Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What about cloud-based applications? Maybe you could explain to us, for me, what exactly that means.
That just means that you've got an application that instead of being on a server behind the firewall at the company, it is being hosted somewhere out there on the internet, and people access it remotely, just like you would access the internet. And in the supply chain space, within transportation management, cloud-based applications based on a multi-tenant architecture, which means every user from every different company is hitting the same application. It's not the same. It's not a different application for each company. It's more advanced in transportation management than virtually any other application except for CRM. So cloud-based computing is not new to supply chain management, and the multi-tenant form of cloud-based applications is perhaps the most extreme, and that's not new to supply chain management. So in one way, the rest of the world is catching up to what has been going on in supply chain management for a good 4 or 5 years.
Are there particular applications where, in supply chain management, where this has really changed the way companies are able to interact with one another?
Yeah, I think a lot of folks are using sort of there's private cloud and public cloud. Public cloud means you're sharing the same application as everybody else. So a lot of folks are just saying, you know, why should we have to devote IT resources to that? We'll do it. So applications like warehouse management that always used to be behind a firewall are now going public. But the private cloud is interesting. It allows you to leverage a network. And so in transportation management, you have to tender out loads. You have to get responses from carriers. You know, if things aren't going well, you have to add new carriers to the network. There's a lot of electronic communication, and there's a lot of data errors and data messiness around that electronic communication. If you're using a private cloud and your TMS provider is cleaning up that data streams, and they're already connected to a bunch of carriers, and you have to add a new carrier, it becomes very easy to do so. So the more collaborative the solution, the more different partners are involved, the more electronic communication has to be, the more a private cloud setting makes sense.
Interesting. What about mobility? Everybody seems to be connected one way or another these days.
Yeah, and again, I think supply chain management, particularly in the transportation area, is perhaps ahead of the game, right? We've been using GPS to track our trucks for a number of years. But what's interesting is how mobility is sort of reshaping the way we think about our applications. So it used to be we had a GPS tracking, sort of know where our trucks were, track and trace, and we had routing, and those were very different applications. And now we're seeing things like GPS and routing and maintenance come together to create new capabilities.
Interesting. And what about this last one that also is one that needs explanation for me, the Internet of Things?
Right. Yeah, the idea is there's been some talk in IT circles about the Internet of Things. And so if you think about your house, you know, your refrigerator is going to talk to you and say, you know, you need to buy some more milk when you're coming home. So that the idea is for everyday consumers, there's going to be a lot of sensors out there telling them when to turn their thermostat up or actually doing it automatically. So just the idea of sensors everywhere, connected and intelligent. And again, I think when you think about supply chain management and you think about GPS, and perhaps a GPS is attached to a truck, and the truck has sensors telling you whether the food is staying cool or whether it's going out of the range, we already have an Internet of Things in the supply chain management space. If you go to a big process plant like an oil refinery, there may be 10,000 sensors out there. So actually, in some ways, supply chain management is ahead of where everyone else is. And for example, in an oil refinery, you have so many sensors, and the question is, what if they start to go outside of their target? How do you manage those alarms? And if there's cascades of alarms, which ones do you focus on? So the idea of alarm management and how you manage alarms is something that I think they've learned how to do in heavy process industries, and those lessons we're going to have to start to learn them in other parts of the supply chain.
It is interesting to think about the supply chain being a leader in a lot of these areas, because that's not something most people think about, I think.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think there's a lot of folks that think about other careers before they think about supply chain management.
Can you tell us just a little bit, when we talk about these different technologies, where process comes in? I know I've seen your graphic that has all of these things tied into processes.
Right.
Tell me how that...
Well, you know, everything in supply chain management, in theory, has some sort of process attached to it. There's a process attached to demand management. There's a process attached to supply planning, a process attached to dropping waves to the floor to pick things in a warehouse. So what's happening is these new technologies are creating new ways of structuring processes, and we just have to learn how to take those technologies and change processes appropriately to make them more efficient.
All right. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Jean.
I've been speaking with Steve Banker of ARC Advisory Group. Thank you for watching.